And in just 10 minutes time, excuse me, just a little bit, a couple minutes, Clay Aiken joins me live to talk about why he says the same-sex marriage vote underway in North Carolina will hurt kids. We're talking about Amendment 1 on the ballot today, that referendum. From Billy Graham to Bill Clinton, heavyweights from across the country, they're weighing in on the same-sex marriage vote. It's underway this minute in North Carolina, and I'm about to speak live with American Idol. You probably are watching him because of Celebrity Apprentice. Here he is, Clay Aiken, about why he says this particular amendment, this Amendment 1, hurts children. Clay Aiken. We all know Clay Aiken for a voice that raises the roof. Today, the Broadway performer and American Idol runner-up using his voice to try to bring down Amendment 1. That's the referendum his home state of North Carolina is voting on today. So what it would do would change the state constitution to say, quote, marriage between one man and one woman is the only domestic legal union that shall be valid or recognized in this state. A little bit of background here. A March survey by our TV affiliate out of Raleigh-Durham found 58% of North Carolinians are for passing the amendment. Clay Aiken, born and raised in North Carolina, still lives there. Nice to have you on, sir.
Thank you.
Let me just begin with this. And I know you're very private, but I just have to preface for people. You have a child. You posed with him proudly on the cover of People magazine. You know, I know you don't speak very publicly about whether or not you have a domestic partner or not. But here's how this might relate to you. If Amendment 1 passes, would this affect you? How would it affect you?
You know, I think the thing that affects everyone, whether it's same-sex couples or opposite-sex couples who have children, is unless they are married. You know, opposite-sex couples who are in a domestic partnership or who are living together, who have children, run the risk of losing health insurance for the child if they're not married. I mean, the thing that's really sort of deceptive about this amendment and the way it's written is that it restricts domestic partnerships, it restricts civil unions for both straight and gay couples, and that's something that, despite the poll you just showed, all the major polls in North Carolina right now show that that there is widespread support for domestic partnerships.
And that's the funny thing, and that's the perplexing thing, because you have obviously some outrage in the state of North Carolina. Gay marriage, it's already banned in North Carolina, despite the fact that the polls you mentioned, they show a majority of North Carolinians support some kind of legal recognition for same-sex couples. So I guess my question to you, and I know you've been retweeting a lot of people who have been voting, do you think people in North Carolina even understand completely what they're voting for today with this amendment?
You know, there's a poll that was just in the Raleigh News and Observer just this morning and yesterday saying that despite the fact that those polls are showing that people are supporting the amendment, in that same poll they're being asked if they know what it does, and the majority of people are not aware of the fact that it restricts domestic partnerships for straight couples as well. So people aren't really necessarily being educated exactly on what this amendment will do, and I think that's the reason that you're seeing the polls so skewed.
Right. I've read someone in Carrboro down the road from Chapel Hill saying this seems deceptive. Bill Clinton, perhaps you bring up the concern with kids, whether it's, same-sex or opposite-sex, domestic partnerships. He would agree. He's already lent his voice to this state issue recently. But on the flip side, you have the Reverend Billy Graham. He has, advertised in these 14 newspapers saying the Bible is clear. God's definition of marriage is between a man and a woman. And I know that North Carolina, there are a lot of voters who agree. You've even, I read an article where you talk about your mother and your brother, who are what typical Republican voters, and had it not been for you and them knowing you and your full story, they would have voted for Amendment 1.
It is possible, and I think there are a lot of people in this country in general who fit in that middle ground, of people who are not to use the word persuadable necessarily, but people who are compassionate and understand the need for equality. North Carolina, the thing that bothers me the most, it is the only state in the South that has not yet voted for a constitutional amendment, and hopefully won't if people get out and vote today. But North Carolina has a history of being a state that takes deliberate steps. We were the last state to secede from the Union and during the Civil War. We were, in general, we have always been a state that takes responsible steps, and this is an example. The the only example in my lifetime, really, of the state taking a very irresponsible step, doing something that's somewhat redundant, because, as you mentioned, there already is a law banning same-sex marriage.
It's already on the books.
And it's already there, and we're essentially putting something in the Constitution, which even the Republican leader of the North Carolina General Assembly has admitted he doesn't believe will stand for in future decades.
And he said these folks now are young, and in 10 or 15 years, perhaps it will be repealed once, folks who feel strongly today but won't necessarily have their voices heard will repeal it down the road. But I do have to ask you this while I still have you, in terms of more of, I guess, a national level, you hear from the president, right, and his perspective specifically on gay marriage, and the word he uses is it's evolving his stance. I'm just curious, what do you think of that, and what more do, people like the president need to learn?
It is frustrating, of course, to hear that. It's promising to hear Joe Biden and other national leaders coming out in support of gay marriage. But I understand the word evolving. I do come from a relatively conservative area and from a conservative family, and my mom would be someone whose stance has evolved, and it doesn't always happen quickly. So I certainly want the president to hurry up and evolve faster. But I definitely believe that he is a champion for equality, not just for gays and lesbians, but for all people in general. And I'm proud that he's my president.
Clay Aiken, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Clay.